finally they got her. The FBI finally arrested Jeffrey Epstein's longtime girlfriend, Gal Friday, and fellow accomplice, Ghislaine, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Ghislaine Maxwell. They caught her in New Hampshire. She was hiding out there, I guess, in a home that she bought in all cash for $1 million. Can you believe this? And now she's arrested. Yeah, I know. The story, this lady, she was like, had dropped cell phones and stuff. She was changing her cell phone number, doing all sorts of things to stay ahead of the law, I guess. But they finally got her, and now there's a big argument about whether she will be allowed out on bail. Of course, God help us, she shouldn't be. If she is denied bail, then she'll be held in the same jail that Jeffrey Epstein was held in. So I guess the question before us is, what's the over-under on how long before she gets suicided? I don't know. That's the question before us. And I want to bring in our next guest, someone who has been covering the Jeffrey Epstein story long before the rest of the media, from the get-go, and that, of course, is Ann Coulter, the author of Resistance is Futile and a gajillion other books that are bestsellers. Ann, welcome to Breitbart News Tonight.
Thank you. So great to be here.
Okay, Ann, over under, how long before she gets suicided? What do you think?
I re-upped the tweet I sent to the Bureau of Prisons 2 weeks before Jeffrey Epstein's alleged suicide, alerting them, Bureau of Prisons, please move Jeffrey Epstein to a supermax immediately. The people who stand to lose are going to make sure he never talks. And 2 weeks later, dead. They did not follow Ann's advice and move him to a supermax. I am wondering I'm dying to hear how this went down. I mean, especially with the FBI so busy looking for, at garage pools, NASCAR. Their agents are so tied up. How they had time to find this international refugee, I can't imagine. Refuge from, or escapee from justice, that is. I wonder if, this is a wild thought, maybe not. I hope she cooperates. She has a lot to lose if she doesn't, and the federal government has a lot to gain if she does cooperate, because there are an awful lot of people implicated in this. But it does kind of make me wonder if she has already been cooperating. Because, I don't know, maybe she realizes that our FBI has devolved into, a few good FBI agents still, and for young people listening, I really wish you would apply to work in the FBI so we could bring it back to its former glory. But, oh my gosh, there are a lot of Keystone cops. So maybe it was just like a gag hanging out in the U.S. on a farm in New Hampshire. But it does make me wonder, had she already started cooperating, and this was just the time they chose to make it public. Who knows? Hopefully we'll find out. One thing I can assure you is we will find out before Megan Twohey at the New York Times, whom I also tweeted at about an hour ago. She was on the Chris Hayes show talking about the horribly botched federal prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein down in Florida, and it was just unbelievable. He only, pled guilty to abuse of a minor, some minor stuff, got a slap on there. And I tweeted at her, hey, Megan, do you know if there was a state case before the federal case? Because it's not really a federal crime to abuse a minor. This is so outrageous how they just blow off that a Democratic prosecutor, footnote, the Democratic prosecutor who spent 5 years going after Rush Limbaugh for taking back pain pills. 5 years. But everything you know about Jeffrey Epstein, I'm also getting a little tired of hearing about, the genius reporting of the Miami Herald, and they brought all this forward, and they got people interested. I would like someone to present to me what was in the Miami Herald that readers of the Palm Beach Post did not know in 2006. And which I begged the national media to cover. All of that was delivered on a silver platter to Democratic prosecutor Barry Krischer, but he was busy going after the back pain medication case. So normally he wouldn't have, this is basically the DA, the state attorney. He wouldn't be the one presenting the case to the grand jury. It probably wouldn't even go to the grand jury. You just indict and take it straight to a jury. But no. He wants a grand jury, and he's going to handle this one himself. We do not know what was said in the grand jury room. He called a single witness, and the only thing Jeffrey Epstein was indicted for was solicitation of prostitution, for which he got parole. That was the outrage. The only reason there even was a federal prosecution. And there are plenty of ways to bootstrap a state case, which is what this was, into the federal courts if you have a corrupt local prosecutor, as Florida did, as New York City does in Cyrus Vance. Cyrus Vance letting both Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein rape girls and women, to wild abandon. No problem in New York, no problem in Palm Beach. And so what happened was the police officer, the chief of police in Palm Beach, this is back in 2006, when he found all the evidence that the rest of you read about, more than a decade later in the Miami Herald, and I think the Miami Herald won a Pulitzer for it. Could we get something for the chief of police of Palm Beach? He's the one who got all that evidence. He was just enraged, and he's writing letters, he's talking to the press, and he takes it to the U.S. attorney down here. Well, that was Alex Azar. And yes, Alex Azar was kind of a sissy in the end, but he got a much tougher plea agreement than the original case. He also had a tougher case because, like I say, you have to use these sneaky little bootstrapping things like transporting girls in interstate commerce for purposes of. But the actual abuse charges, those are state claims. There isn't a federal law that you can't abuse minors. That is the jurisdiction of state criminal law. And the fact that they keep talking about the federal prosecution while preserving the good reputation of this hack Democrat prosecutor, just like Cyrus Vance, will spend the entire office's resources going after conservatives and Republicans, but let child molesters and rapists go free because, they're big Democratic donors.
So, Ann, clarify this for me again. The state prosecutor declined to prosecute Epstein? Was just going to let it go? Just let it slide?
Well, it was in some ways worse than that. He pretended he was going to take it seriously, and all the evidence was there. Just, briefly, the chief of police writer, some woman came in. How did it happen? They had arrested some West Palm Beach girl on, shoplifting or something. And she tells the police, whatever it was, she was being called a whore at school because they saw all this money in her purse. She's, 13 years old. And the word had kind of gotten around that some of these girls from broken families into drugs, 13 years old, were going to some billionaire's place in Palm Beach and having sex for money. So it had come out, the girl told her mother. The mother brought her daughter to the Palm Beach police, where the billionaire was, tells the story to the police. And starts naming names. Each name they talked to, they had, they're actual police, not Democratic hacks. So each person they talked to would give them more names. They had affidavits from the madame, not Ghislaine. There was another one, a local one, who was like a 22-year-old girl who would pick up the younger girls. They had affidavits from, I think it was a dozen of the girls themselves who had been abused. Affidavits from them. All of this is going on. Jeffrey Epstein is still abusing the girls. And Palm Beach police are collecting evidence as fast as they can. They have an affidavit from the butler at Jeffrey Epstein's mansion who talks about going into the rooms to clean up after after the 13-year-old girls had been there and taking black dildos out of the bathroom sink, for example, and, the massage oils and all the sex toys around, and giving the girls money and calling cabs from. They have an affidavit from that guy. They've also been going through Jeffrey Epstein, the trash that being picked up at his house every day in Palm Beach. Instead of going to the dump, it would go to the Palm Beach police. So they have notes from Ghislaine or someone else to Jeffrey saying that, so-and-so wants to know if it's okay if she comes over after soccer practice. So-and-so can't make it at 11 a.m., because she has an algebra exam. So they have proof that, he knows that these are underage girls. They had everything. They give that to Barry Krischer, and what he does, instead of just saying, this goes to the sex crimes unit, do what you usually do, which, by the way, would not involve a grand jury. Like I say, they just arrest him and take it to a jury. No, Barry Krischer, another big Democrat, he's going to protect Jeffrey Epstein. So he takes it to the grand jury. We do not know what he said to the grand jury, though the great Governor DeSantis, whom I hope someday soon we will be calling President DeSantis, he's requested, I don't know what the results of this, I think we'd know about it if it had been released yet. I don't know why it takes so long. But he's requested copies of the grand jury transcript. What exactly did Barry Krischer say to the grand jury that they thought it was appropriate to return an indictment for a single count that is utterly insulting to the victims, solicitation of prostitution? Solicitation of prostitution. He's calling the 13-year-old girls prostitutes. One count of that. He only called one witness. We know that much. But reasonable minds would like to know, what exactly kind of case did Barry Krischer make? Barry Krischer, you have not heard of on any of these networks. You will not read about him. No, we have to keep going to Alex Azar. The only way the media ever got interested in this case involving a lot of big Democrats and a lot of big Democratic donors. There are a few Republicans who also deserve their place in the Hall of Shame, not so much for fooling around with the 13-year-old girls or riding on Lolita Express, but for signing on to the Jeffrey Epstein defense team like Ken Starr. I mean, it's utterly appalling. Will you do anything for money? So as soon as it goes to the feds, Bush was president, Azar was a U.S. attorney under Bush. It was just Dershowitz. And his ilk down here, I think that guy, what's his name, Black, the attorney, what's his name? He did the 2000 election. I can't think of his first name right now, but another not very clean and impressive lawyer. We'll put it that way. Always for the Democrats. So it was all Democrats working on Jeffrey Epstein's case until it goes before a Republican-appointed U.S. attorney, Alex Azar. That's when they.
I think it's Acosta. Wasn't it Alex Acosta? Was the guy? I thought with the Epstein case. Azar is our current HHS secretary.
Oh, I think you're probably right. Yeah, it was Acosta. Of course it was Acosta. Of course it was Acosta. Yeah, because he's Cuban. Yeah, Florida. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, it was, sorry, forgive me for saying that. Thank you for correcting me. Sorry, you got these names stuck in your head. And in defense of Acosta, he at least took the case. I mean, he has to reach, he has to maneuver to turn a state sex crimes case into a federal case at all. But in the end, and this is the problem with lawyers, and probably explains a lot about why our lawyers go bad and theirs don't, from the Supreme Court on down, is that they're sissies. They may have very high IQs and did really well on their LSATs, but they are the molecular opposite of the Proud Boys. And so what happened in Acosta's office, and he's talked about this, was that everyone in his office started being threatened, accused. They're looking into their personal lives, trying to take their children away. And he still got more than the Democratic state attorney who had the real original case and the proper case to bring, the Barry Krischer case. But I mean, to have 100% of the blame come down on Alex Coulter. He also had nothing to do with the terms of the sentence. He at least got Jeffrey Epstein registered as a sex offender. He was charged with a sex crime. He was going to serve time in prison, but they had him plead guilty to a state charge because, again, that's what his crime was. So that goes over to state officials to determine the confinement and the imprisonment. So one of the things Alex Acosta gets attacked for is the absolutely cush terms that Jeffrey Epstein had in his jail cell. He had his own wing in West Palm Beach, and he was allowed to leave during the day and go to his office. And he only served like 6 months. He had girls coming to visit him. It was a total fraud. Alex Acosta had nothing to do with that. Nothing. You send it over to the state. So, and by the way, DeSantis, bless his soul, Governor DeSantis, has demanded an investigation into that too. And the only thing, I mean, I guess I'm talking a lot about ancient history because we don't really know what's going on. I gave you my what I find interesting about the Ghislaine arrest today. Is she already cooperating? Will she cooperate? I assume she will. Wait, there was one thing I was going to say about this. So ancient history, the terms, Ghislaine, I don't know, it flew out of my head.
Well, you'll get it back again. We're talking with Ann Coulter. But Ann, okay, so with this Maxwell lady, the thing that I'm interested in all these documentaries that are coming out now, they don't want to talk about like the giant glaring holes in the whole story, which is how the hell did this guy get his money?
Oh, yeah.
His money.
Yeah.
There's all these things. In the
How
story.
dare you question that?
Yeah, like, how the hell did this guy get his money? Where did all the tapes go? Apparently, he videotaped everybody in his house in New York.
He was using it for blackmail. That seems clear. For whom? The only thing I think is definite about that is that it was a foreign power. It was a state. It wasn't. Nothing else makes sense. And I've gone through all of the possibilities. But this idea that it was, what's his name, Wexner, who owned Limited Brands and did seem to be a special friend of Epstein's. I mean, it just doesn't make sense, whether as blackmail or as the concierge of the sex ring. It doesn't make sense for anyone to be paying Epstein that much money. For a foreign government to be paying Epstein and buying all this stuff and sending him out to have a lot of compromised individuals, not only government officials, but academics with lots of letters after their names, that could come in handy. And you don't actually have to use it for blackmail particularly. You just have to know, you just have to let your mark know that you have this, and then ask favors of him.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I mean, there's just so much unanswered. And remember that Vicky Ward, the investigative journalist, when she was looking into this case, she was trying to find out, what about the vetting of Alex Acosta when he was being vetted for the labor secretary position? And someone in the administration said, when we asked him about that during the vetting process, he said that was above his pay grade, that Epstein belonged to intelligence, was the term used, meaning a foreign intelligence of some sort, or some intelligence agency.
Everything points to it being a foreign government operation, to have a lot of compromised individuals in the United States, both in government and at Harvard and MIT. So if something came up relevant to the foreign government's interests, like I say, it's not blackmail in the sense of pay me $1 million. It's blackmail in the sense of, what if he has a tape of that? You know, all he wants to do is have me say this government program is a good idea. That's not such a big deal. I can do that. So you have all these compromised individuals, and I remembered what I was going to say before. And that is one interesting thing. I was going through ancient history. One current interesting thing about the case is it's being brought by the Southern District of New York, again, a federal court, because there's a corrupt DA in New York City. Cyrus Vance will prosecute the Proud Boys, but not Harvey Weinstein, not Jeffrey Epstein. Eventually, when it got embarrassing, a decade later, he brings Harvey Weinstein in. But no, he was allowed to rape freely for 10 years. Okay, so the current case is being brought, at least in part, I don't know if you can split these things up, by the Public Corruption Unit. That's why everything I just blathered about, blaming the state attorney general and taking at least a lot of the blame off the federal U.S. attorney, actually is relevant, because I noticed on Twitter that all these idiots seem to think, oh, now they're going to get Acosta, and that it goes up to Trump. No, I don't think so. You could accuse Acosta of wimpiness in the end when his office came under attack. You can't accuse him of what Barry Krischer is guilty of. And he had everything we know now. The Miami Herald produced, again, show me the new stuff they have, that chief writer didn't already know, didn't present to Krischer in the summer of 2006. He had it all.
Yeah, I mean... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, one of my favorite angles to this whole case, especially with Ghislaine, is like, this woman was a part of the New York socialite circuit for like 4 decades.
Yes.
And she's photographed with, all of these like fashion establishment types and all of like the hip young women at the time floating around Manhattan. And really, she's a famed, oceanographer, philanthropist, really. She was just trying to save the dolphins, honestly. But, like, where are all of these people, and why have none of those people been called in to question?
Yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Well, let's hope. I tend to be pessimistic about this based on what's happened to the case since I've been following it since 2006. Begging the media to show some interest in this case. Oh, no, we need to tell you, wither ISIS. And what's going on in Yemen today? No, that's way more important. So I tend to think it'll be buried. We won't find out anything. The case will quietly go away. Perhaps the foreign government behind this is very powerful.
Perhaps she'll be gone away with. She might go. She might be gone away with. Who knows?
Right, exactly. I have regarding all the fancy people he and she were hanging around in New York. I can tell you one person they won't be seen with, and that's moi. I had my own encounter with Jeffrey Epstein, and before I give you this little vignette,
we will make America great again.